Canelo Alvarez has just gone out and proved to just about everybody why he is still the best pound for pound fighter in the world right now. You see, it was May 4th, Cinco de Mayo weekend, where Canelo Alvarez usually likes to have his fights. The day that Mexican army won their war over France. He's Mexican, so of course he likes to fight around this time of the year. And this time, his opponent was another Mexican in Jaime Munguia, an up-and-coming fighter. I wouldn't say that. He is 27 years old and has about 40 plus fights under his belt. But still, he's on the rise right now, and he went up against the greatest Mexican boxer of all time in Canelo Alvarez. And of course, Canelo Alvarez has been in the game so long, he is 33 years old, that at this point, there isn't any other superstars left for him to really fight. So at this point, he's just going out and defending, the several titles that he currently holds. For example, he went out and defended his undisputed super middleweight titles against Jaime, at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas over the weekend. And while Munguia may not have been the biggest name in boxing, he was 43-0 heading into this fight, had never really been knocked down, of course had taken some major punches and had been able to eat them up before, but he also had 34 knockouts in those 43 fights, so there was a potential here for Canelo Alvarez to potentially get blasted and it be a good fight, and it was. This went the entire 12 rounds, and this was the first time Canelo Alvarez was fighting another Mexican-born fighter since that bout against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. back in 2017. So this was kind of a big deal, right? And of course, any Canelo Alvarez fight is going to draw in fans, as did this one. Now let's get into the fight, where Jaime started off very strong. He wasn't backing down from Canelo Alvarez, wasn't afraid of the legend on the other side of the ring from him. Now early on, he did try to establish a few jabs, like his promoter Oscar De La Hoya mentioned in an interview when asked about how Jaime could beat Canelo Alvarez. He needed to establish that jab early, and he did that. He also was able to use his height to his advantage to keep Canelo at a distance, because you don't want to let Canelo Alvarez inside or you're basically screwed. Another thing that Munguia did very well is he responded with some quick combinations, often connecting to the head and the body of Canelo, and this was happening maybe the first 1, 2, maybe even 3 rounds. He also, out-punched Canelo Alvarez, threw him a lot more punches than he was. And that was kind of just Canelo Alvarez, playing it safe early on, really trying to get a feel for how he was going to go about attacking Jaime. And then the 4th round comes around, and before we continue on with this video, I just wanted to take a quick pause to make sure you guys liked and subscribed to the channel. We're trying to hit 3,000. I feel like we can do it. We get closer by the day, so every subscription counts. Alright, just do it for me. Thank you. Alright, now let's get back to the video. And this is when things really started to take a turn in Canelo's favor. It was a pretty solid fight for the first half of the 4th round, and then in the final minutes, Canelo caught Munguia with a string of counters and an uppercut that absolutely knocked him down. I wouldn't believe you if you told me he didn't have brain damage from that punch, because the way Munguia's head just rocked back, you could see his brain shaking. And of course, Canelo would go on to win that round 10-8. And after winning the 4th round, he would end up winning, the rest of the middle rounds. It felt like he really took control of this fight. Munguia just looked a bit shook, especially in the 5th round, where he didn't feel like himself. That same Munguia that came out really strong wasn't really there in the 5th round or 6th round. But of course, eventually Munguia was able to recover from that absolute killer shot, because he has been able to do that in his previous few fights. I mean, lately it seems like every fight Munguia takes this absolute rocket to the face or the body, and he's able to bounce back and eventually win it. So of course, he recovered after that major blow, and the second half of the fight begins with Munguia really trying to apply some pressure to Canelo, because at this point, Canelo has outlanded him punches-wise, and that really felt like that was one of the things Munguia would have over Canelo, and that just hadn't been the case for the first half of this fight. So he tries his best to apply some pressure, but Canelo just doesn't seem phased at all. And then in the next few rounds, Canelo is obviously controlling the pace of this thing. He seems like in complete control of this fight, and however it plays out will be, you know, exactly how Canelo wants it to. But you can't count Munguia out just yet, because the 9th and 10th rounds were a lot better for Munguia, especially offensively, where he was able to land some pretty solid shots to the body and head of Canelo Alvarez that really kept him in this fight. And by in this fight, I mean, you know, that stopped him from being KO'd, right? And of course, you know, there was a little bit of a couple low blow incidents that Munguia had, to the point where the ref had to warn him to chill out with that. But again, Canelo just doesn't seem fazed at all by what's happening. Not once did Canelo look shook or scared. This was an easy day, a typical day in the office for Alvarez. He walked in and out of this fight basically the exact same. Now, in the later rounds, I'm talking the 11th to 12th of final rounds, this is when Munguia stands strong, puts up a great defense against Canelo Alvarez, because Canelo Alvarez is going for the kill. In the lead up to this fight, Canelo talked about how he was going to end it with a knockout, right? And it was going to happen by the 8th round. So when we enter the 11th and 12th round, all of a sudden Canelo realizes, okay, I might have put him on the ground, but I haven't ended this fight, so let me try and do that. And he does try his best, right? But he's kind of just getting up there in age. That Canelo Alvarez we saw in his prime, who was able to get this knockout at the end of fights, you know, the KO, wasn't really that same guy, right? He is still a superstar, and by no means has he lost, you know, a giant step or two, but maybe a few steps in his game, right? So that's why this fight went 12 rounds, because Munguia's defense was phenomenal. He was able to stop Canelo Alvarez from slaughtering him at the end, and Alvarez kind of felt like it looked like he was a bit tired. And of course, the fight would end, and we would head to the judges' scorecards. Now, it was a unanimous decision for Canelo Alvarez, and honestly, none of the scorecards seemed even close. The closest one was 115 to 112, while the others were 116, 111, and 117, 110. So it was clear to just about everybody that Canelo had won a majority of the rounds, especially in between here, and he won this with ease, is what I've been trying to say. Now, going into this fight, Munguia talked about how Canelo Alvarez was his idol, had looked up to him, and, you know, if you take a look at Munguia's background, that makes sense. However, when he said he was going to step in the ring, that was all going to go out the window, and he was going to try his best to end Canelo Alvarez. It didn't work out, okay? Now, who does Canelo Alvarez fight next? I don't know. Maybe he fights, you know, Benavidez, but Benavidez is moving up in weight. I don't know if Canelo Alvarez catches him. Plus, had been asked about this at the end of the fight, and Canelo Alvarez's response was money. You know, if the money's right, I'll do it. But honestly, I can do what I want. That's basically what he said. I'm Mexican. I can do whatever the hell I want. I am the biggest boxer in the world right now. So we kind of just got to go by my terms. And that's basically it for this video. Just wanted to recap the fight, and I felt like I did a pretty good summary, right? Anyway, catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.